promoted for years and years. Look, more hours of enrichment, more literacy coaches, more reading specialists, healthy meals for all, an entire grade for everyone. But we understand it's not just any one of these initiatives on their own. It's also the complete transformation of our campuses through rigorous, relevant, and engaging.
Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of The Afternoon Shift. My name is Maxwell Fuller. The show, as always, is produced by Grace Henry. Normally, this is a part of the show where I list off a bunch of goofy nicknames. I do a long-winded intro, and we start the show off with some breezy, not so serious stuff. But obviously, in light of recent events, we figured we'd be doing you a disservice, you, our lovely viewer, if we weren't bringing you the latest news on everything happening in Minneapolis right now. As many of you know, yesterday was a tragic day in the history of the state. 37-year-old Renee Good was shot and killed by an ICE officer in Minneapolis during an immigration enforcement operation. Federal officials are claiming the shooting was in self-defense, while others, including Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and witnesses on the scene, dispute the claim. The incident was captured in various videos from multiple angles. You can go to fox9.com. It's all over social media. We're not going to show you those videos here today, but they are available from a variety of different angles. Naturally, the incident has sparked nationwide outrage. There's been a lot happening in the aftermath of the shooting in the last day and some change. So let's try and give you an update on what's been happening today. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension said it was forced to withdraw from investigating the shooting after the FBI took control of the case. They made a statement earlier today saying initially they had been asked to review the use of force by the ICE agent with the FBI. However, later in the day, yesterday on Wednesday, officials say the FBI had informed the BCA that the U.S. Attorney's Office had reversed that decision, removing the BCA from the investigation. Their statement that they released earlier today reads, "Without complete access to the evidence, witnesses, and information collected, we cannot meet the investigative standards that Minnesota law and the public demands. As a result, the BCA has reluctantly withdrawn from the investigation. The BCA Force Investigations Unit was designed to ensure consistency, accountability, and public confidence, none of which can be achieved without full cooperation and jurisdictional clarity." The BCA goes on to add, "We expect the FBI to conduct a thorough and complete investigation and that the full investigative file will be shared with the appropriate prosecutorial authorities at both the state and the federal levels." Governor Walz says he's pushing for the Minnesota BCA to be brought back into the investigation, while Attorney General Keith Ellison suggested earlier today that the state could investigate the shooting without federal approval, although I believe he did add that he hopes that it does not come to that. Meanwhile, just a few hours ago, Vice President J.D. Vance spoke on the shooting, saying the officer discharged his weapon in self-defense. Vance went on to say, quote, "I can believe that her death is a tragedy, while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making and a tragedy of the far left who has marshaled an entire movement, a lunatic fringe against our law enforcement and officers," end quote. We'll hear directly from Tim Walz and some members of the Minnesota Immigration Rights Action Committee, among possibly others. We're trying to do our best to keep our ear to the streets. As soon as we get some information, we're going to let you know that information. We're trying to keep everything up to date. Grace Henry, our producer, our lovely producer, it's just been a chaotic last 24 hours here at the Fox 9 offices. I cannot imagine what it's like for the families of Renee Good and those involved in the whole incident that happened with ICE yesterday.
Yeah, it's really a tragic time for our city, and yeah, I mean, there's just been, we've been part of a couple news meetings today, and it's a lot to tackle. I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to our Fox 9 team. Our reporters are doing a great job and are staying safe. You know, I'm looking at, to give you guys a glimpse behind the camera, but I can see all these different live shots of all these protests happening around. And later today on the news from 5 to I believe 9 p.m. tonight, there will will be coverage of the protests and giving live updates from our reporters, but we actually will be hearing from Fox 9 reporter Leon Purvis. We're not sure if we'll get him from a protest happening or just from a vehicle, but he will kind of fill us in. He was actually at the scene yesterday where the shooting occurred. So we'll hear from him, and we're working on getting a camera set up of a protest outside of the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building outside of the airport, where a large group has gathered to protest today. So just stay tuned. We'll be bringing you live shots as things develop and as we get more reporters on the scene.
Absolutely, like Grace said, as things are happening, we'll be bringing into live right here on Fox 9. Again, shout out to all of our colleagues out there on the scene, all of the cameramen, all of the reporters and the anchors. Really, everybody's been an all hands on deck kind of affair. This is the place to be if you want to stay up to date with information on the shooting of Renee Good. We got plenty more on that tragic shooting coming up right here on the afternoon shift. We'll hear directly from Governor Tim Walz. That'll be just a few moments coming up right now on the afternoon shift. Back to the afternoon shift. Max Fuller here. As always, we are a Grace Henry production, and we continue to sort through the aftermath of the travesty that was the shooting of Renee Good by an ICE agent yesterday in Minneapolis. Earlier today, Governor Tim Walz and Minnesota DPS Commissioner Bob Jacobson spoke at length on the shooting. So rather than try and sum up their words, we figured we'd bring them right to you straight from the source. So here is Governor Tim Walz and MN DPS Commissioner Bob Jacobson.
Good morning. I'd like to start again this morning extending sympathies to Renee Good's wife and child, to the rest of the family. Deepest sympathies on an unimaginable tragedy and the horror of the last 24 hours. Also a deep thank you to Minnesotans and those across the country. I understand a fund has been set up to support Renee's 6-year-old child and wife. Other things being done. I would encourage Minnesotans and folks across the country in this moment. You're seeing neighborliness and kindness rise to the occasion. Is go and find out what they're doing there and give some help if you can. I'd also say last night we saw Minnesotans meet the moment once again. Thousands of Minnesotans demonstrated last night peacefully. They shared a message about the reckless ICE mobilization is not keeping us safe and led to the tragedy that the world witnessed once again. To Minnesota, I say thank you. There's strength in numbers, there's power in peace, and what we saw was a beautiful vigil to a life that we're starting to learn more about. And I will let those that want to push out false narratives, to slander or defame Renee Good, Minnesotans will tell her life story. Minnesotans will be there to defend her honor and see this as a human being, not a moment in time or the callous casualness that I've watched some people on TV gloss over what they saw. We've also spent a lot of time talking last 24 hours about accountability. That means no function of government operates with impunity. It means when someone's in a position of authority and they commit any act that impacts our people, there has to be another place to turn to get justice. Checks and balances. Basic idea, the center of the formation of our country. It's the only measure that protects us from the abuse of government or federal overreach or tyrannical government. Yesterday, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the BCA, spent the day yesterday attempting to get that accountability. We have learned that the Trump administration has now denied the state that ability to participate in the investigation. And I just want to make this as clear as possible to everyone. Minnesota must be part of this investigation. These are nonpartisan career professionals that have spent years building the trust of the community. There's a BCA Force Investigations Unit that was created by the legislature, by the people of Minnesota, to provide an independent, consistent, and trusted mechanism for investigating the use of force incidents involving law enforcement officers. Minnesota has seen our share of these. And what you've seen is, and I have witnessed it during my time, that these professionals have risen to the moment. They are trusted by people. People who are not by inclination trusting of law enforcement or government have come to see the professionals at the BCA as true arbitrators that can get them justice. The unit is the result of years of scrutiny, public engagement, and bipartisan legislative action. Minnesotans have made it clear time and again they expect transparency through this process where a police officer uses deadly force. The BCA, Commissioner, Superintendent Evans, have earned that trust by delivering on that expectation. I think it's clear to everyone as they saw this that it feels now that Minnesota has been taken out of the investigation. It feels very, very difficult that we will get a fair outcome. And I say that only because people in positions of power have already passed judgment, from the president to the vice president to Kristi Noem, have stood and told you things that are verifiably false, verifiably inaccurate. They have determined the character of a 37-year-old mom that they didn't even don't know. They've determined that the actions are done. I don't know. I've not used inflammatory terms of what happened. I've asked us to find the answers. The only way we find the answers is a thorough investigation by nonpartisan professionals. We've delivered that. We've been able to do it. We've earned the trust. And when I say that, the trust of BCA, and I tell Minnesotans the trust of law enforcement here. Everyone knows, globally, certainly here, that George Floyd, who was murdered a few blocks from this site, tore at the soul of who we were. But we healed. We built back trust. Chief Brian O'Hara came in and took one of the most difficult jobs in America of building back trust in the police force in Minneapolis after Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd. And he's earned that. And he's level. And he's fair. And he's asking for that. And so, Minnesotans, I will continue to press that we be part of the investigation, that we do the investigation, so that Minnesotans can trust what the outcome is. I don't have a predetermined notion. Yes, I saw the video. Yes, I saw that. But a thorough investigation will see what happened before that. It will take all factors in, and it will come up with a fair and just conclusion. And we will accept that. Very, very difficult for Minnesotans to think in any way this is going to be fair when Kristi Noem was judge, jury, and basically executioner yesterday. That's very, very difficult to think that they were going to be fair. With that being said, Minnesotans, we've risen to the occasion so far, but it's going to get challenging. It's going to be challenging because I feel your anger. The human desire to lash out in this moment is very real. I can tell you that that is the wish of many people, that they fulfill the wish they want to see us turn on one another, turn towards violence rather than peaceful reconciliation, rather than peaceful civil disobedience. And we have to do our best to not play into that. I say this too when I saw yesterday some of the anger, whether it's Minneapolis Police, Minnesota State Patrol, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, Minnesota National Guard. They are there to protect and serve, as it said. They are there to protect Minnesotans. Throwing your anger at them only inflames this situation. And I know some of you were up at the Whipple building this morning, and to the press who are here, I saw some of this myself. Thank you. Continue to have access to every single space. Continue to cover this story. Continue to show the world what's out there. I will say it where our president won't. The press are the defenders of our democracy. You need to be there. But I also tell folks, protect our Minnesotans who are out there and don't turn the anger to them. This is a brazen use of force. They want us to bend the knee. They want us to capitulate. The way we give them what they want is allow them to use this as an excuse to put more troops on the ground. Use them as an excuse to show that these are violent protests. And I also witnessed what I think is going to be a pattern over the next few days and the coming hours, is I saw an individual show up there with the intent to antagonize folks who were peacefully protesting, with a bullhorn to scream at them. And again, the desire to move on that individual is exactly what they want, because our respect for the First Amendment means we will expect and respect all opinions. If this individual is there expressing support for ICE, that's their constitutional right to do so, and they need to be protected. Don't allow that to be a catalyst to create violence. We believe in states' rights. We believe the federal government needs to stay out of this. We believe that the situation has gotten worse and less safe because of their presence. And I will just say there were two incidents yesterday I saw after this that just tore at my soul. I saw an individual at the scene identify themselves as medical personnel, a physician, and asked to provide aid, and an ICE agent said, "I do not care." That lack of humanity was chilling to me. And after this incident happened, and after the tensions rose, ICE agents entered a Minnesota school, causing disruptions at that school. I can't say this strongly enough as governor, as a parent, as a teacher. To our elected representatives, Democrats and Republicans, I beg you, I implore you to tell them to stay out of our schools. This tragedy will be magnified 100-fold if this fight moves into the hallways of our public schools amongst our youth. And they're watching us. They're watching us now, how we respond. So I've got a few simple asks. Let us, the professionals, handle this on Minnesota soil, this investigation. De-escalate this situation by removing yourselves from this situation with these 2,000 agents that were put here. And above all else, stay out of our schools. I'd like to ask you to care, but that might be a step too far for some people. But I know Minnesotans care. So we'll protest peacefully. We will win in courts. We will certainly win in the defense of our democracy, because the American people see what's happening here. But the way that we don't win and the way that we lose, if this turns towards violence and allows them to escalate. It cannot happen. So I ask the grasstop leaders out there, the faith leaders, the folks who are on the streets, and in many times the true leaders are not the elected officials. They're the folks on the ground. I beg you, implore you, follow those words of the leaders we've had. I had the privilege of serving with John Lewis. And John talked about good trouble. I'm not telling you not to find good trouble, But I asked John many times, I said, John, I don't know if I'd have your self-restraint. Didn't you want to lash out? He said, yes, daily. But he said, I wanted to win this. I wanted to do what right, and I wanted justice to prevail. And to do that, I knew the only way was to not lash out, to not give in to that. So to each and every one of you, we're not going to win this through violence. We're going to win it through justice. We're going to win it through compassion. We're going to win it through Minnesota Nice. And we're going to win it by holding every one of these people accountable as they should for what we've seen on the streets of Minneapolis. With that, I'm going to turn to Commissioner Jacobson to give you a situation update.
Thank you, Governor. Again, I'm Bob Jacobson, and it is my honor to serve as the Commissioner of Public Safety. First of all, again, I want to express my sincere condolences to the loved ones of Renee Nicole Good. Someone has lost their life, and that is not something that anyone takes lightly. Minnesotans came out yesterday to express their grief, their frustration, and their anger at this terrible tragedy. I expect that they will continue to come out today. And I want to thank everyone who demonstrated peacefully. This helped honor Renee's memory and gave her family space to mourn. Minnesota's residents and visitors have the right to demonstrate and to exercise their First Amendment rights. I want to remind everyone that there are safe ways to do so. Our goal is to reduce tensions, to avoid conflict, and to maintain a calm environment. As I mentioned yesterday, we recommend the following safe and lawful ways to demonstrate. Please get together peacefully with others in public areas where pedestrians are allowed. March or walk together in pedestrian areas, please, not on the roadways. Make your voice heard through chants, speeches, and displaying signs. There are a few things I just want to mention very quickly that are unsafe. Because as always, our top priority is public safety, and we cannot allow behaviors that create hazards, threaten public safety, or disrupt emergency services or endanger people nearby. That would include certainly demonstrating on the freeway, walking on highways, throwing objects, setting things on fire, property damage, graffiti, fireworks, illegal weapons, reckless and dangerous driving, or assaultive or aggressive behavior. I know that we all want more definitive answers about that fatal shooting that occurred yesterday. And as we are able to get those answers and dispel rumors and false information, then we can rightfully honor Renee's memory and help her family, loved ones, and our community heal. With that, I'll turn it back to Governor Walz and maybe a few questions.
Please. Esme? I have not. As I said yesterday, I did speak to Secretary Noem and received a lot of talking points. I will note that I asked Secretary Noem how she would have felt if President Biden had sent 2,000 troops into Rapid City, South Dakota, and she said she would have welcomed them. I leave that for the folks of South Dakota to determine. I've not spoken to the president. I would ask him, first of all, the goal here is to make America safe, is what he said. There is no verifiable evidence that any of this is making America safer. I would ask him to de-escalate in the moment, to allow Minnesotans to back up and grieve, to allow this investigation to be played out by the rule of law. I said it again, I have not passed any judgment on this. And to please, whatever it is, leave Minnesota alone. Earlier this week, I don't know if it was if something he wanted or I've already made it clear. I'm exiting the stage here in a year. But I told him I have a year to continue to do what I love dearly and what I believe I've been good at, making Minnesota a better place to live. The number of calls we got today of parents asking if they should send their kids to school or not. Minneapolis had to make what I believe was the absolute correct decision to cancel school. We have students out of learning today. I would just ask him, I'm not talking anything about border security. I'm not talking anything about what he needs to do on that. None of this is accomplishing either his mission or making us any safer. So just give us a pause. Let us breathe. Look, we're exhausted. We're exhausted as Minnesotans, we're exhausted as Americans, and this relentless assault on Minnesota for whatever reason is just cruel now. It has reached cruelness. So please, just give us a break. And if it's me, you're already getting what you want. But leave my people alone. Leave our state alone. And look again and see what's happening. It's not me saying it. You're hearing it from many, many others. So that's what I would say.
Is there anything stopping state and local law enforcement from conducting an independent investigation into this, even if the federal government does not want to have you have a joint investigation?
So, great question. We have asked for cooperation from the federal government. We were invited in to do a joint investigation on this initially. We continue to work with the federal government all the time on joint investigations. This is not something new, whether it be with the FBI or other federal law enforcement agencies, so we are accustomed to doing joint investigations. As the governor has mentioned, our Force Investigative Unit within the BCA has a stellar reputation for doing quality investigations, for finding the answers to the questions that people have. There are so many questions out there that I know the public has from watching what's been shown on social media and regular media. And the goal for me would be to provide an investigation, preferably in tandem with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, because we work with them all the time, and they do have all the evidence in the original investigative notes and reports. We have none of that. They have shared none of that with us. We would welcome the opportunity to jump back in, to do that investigation, use our high-quality investigators from the BCA to be able to do that with them, to find the answers that the public deserves. Without any of that information, or without any of that assistance from the FBI or the federal government, we would be at a loss to be able to initiate and conduct a thorough investigation. For us to be able to do that, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, without cooperation from the federal government.
How difficult would it be to file state charges without the cooperation of the FBI?
To be able to file state charges, we would need, again, a full investigation, which would include the opportunity to have been at the crime scene, to have had the opportunity to take a look at all the video and evidence that the FBI would have in their possession. I don't make any prejudgments about what happened yesterday. We can all see what we want to see on the videos and what we have seen in the media. That doesn't mean that none of us, I will not, as a public safety professional, jump to any conclusions as to who is at fault in this. What I will say, though, is that unless we do that thorough investigation, unless we have access to all of that evidence, unless we have access to the agents that were involved in that, to any witnesses, without any of that, we would not be able to put together a quality investigation for any prosecutor to be able to make a determination as to whether or not someone should be charged with a crime.
Can I ask
I'm going to note on this, too, that no one less than Tom Holman yesterday said it would be unprofessional to pass judgment ahead of time. Now, the disconnect between what Tom Holman said and Kristi Noem said needs to be rectified by the federal government. I will note, too, this is a question I asked, not being an attorney of my team, and it will go to the family, that there will certainly be civil cases filed on this, and those will be filed in Minnesota court and be held in court. Corin?
What is standard operating procedure when a federal agent of any kind in Minnesota shot and killed somebody, a civilian? Are you usually involved? Is there usually a joint investigation?
Generally, if there is any investigation involving use by a federal officer, generally the federal government, federal officials will lead that investigation. We have participated in numerous investigations in the past. It is very infrequent where there's a use of force by a law enforcement officer, federal law enforcement officer, but we have worked jointly and shared information in previous investigations.
I'd like to say, I'm gonna add on this. I'm gonna say, if you truly wanted to de-escalate this situation, the logical conclusion would be to follow that procedure and allow Minnesota to participate. And that's where we started yesterday. And it's one of the reasons I came out here, and I'm not going to criticize that because that was the proper process. And I'm going to have to talk to Minnesotans to try, and it's a very difficult task. I think we all know what can happen here, to calmly wait until all the facts come out. I think you in this room are seeing the gravity of this situation by not allowing Minnesota to participate, and the prejudgment that's already been made by leadership creates a very, very dangerous situation. And that's why, once again, I'm going to reiterate to our federal partners, simply let us be part of this. Use our professional folks. They will gain you the credibility and the trust of Minnesotans to believe the work that you're doing is honest, and it's not just a whitewash to backfill a predeceived notion. All right, so I got 10.
That the state can do to put in additional protection around schools or to allow for additional e-learning days for these situations?
Yeah, it's interesting, Dana, that you would ask that. We were just, as we were coming in here discussing, someone asked about that, and they mentioned Ruby Bridges and the Little Rock folks about escorting people in. We have not determined that yet, but it is a situation that we're going to have to explore. As I said, again, the thing that cut me deeply was watching what happened in our schools and the chaos. And I was on with Commissioner Jett this morning as he's talking to folks from and tomorrow in those schools, or does it pose a potential risk? And
Once again, that was Governor Tim Walz and Minnesota Department of Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson speaking earlier today in the aftermath of the shooting of Renee Good by an ICE agent. If you want to catch those press conferences in full, fox9.com, Fox9 YouTube has got you covered. Following the shooting, naturally, protests have been ongoing all throughout the land of 10,000 lakes. I believe we actually have a live camera of a protest beginning to form there outside of the Bishop Henry Whipple building in Minneapolis. I know that was the site of a big-time protest last night, and people have been gathering there pretty much ever since all evening. Grace, is there a specific time that the specific event is going down there at the Whipple building?
Well, it's been going on all day. There's been protesters out there since this morning. I know they were taking it live at 8 a.m. I believe, as the day continues, there'll be more, but I know there is one happening here and then also happening at the location of the shooting yesterday on Portland Avenue at 5:30. So I can see there's another camera shot up of the location where the shooting happened yesterday, and there's people gathered outside of there. But the shot that you're seeing right now is at the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building in St. Paul. It's near the airport, near Fort Snelling. We've seen lots of people holding different signs, and I believe those are ICE agents out there. It's remained fairly peaceful from what I've seen sitting here for the last hour or so. We'll be bringing you more live shots of that. We will have Leon Purvis heading to another protest that's on Lake Street and Chicago Avenue in Minneapolis. So like I said, there's protests happening all around the Minneapolis area. And this is the one that has appeared to be the most active all day today.
Yeah, protests happening all around Minneapolis, St. Paul, all of Minnesota, all of the country, really, as we all continue to process the shooting of Renee Good yesterday, 37-year-old Renee Good in Minneapolis by an ICE agent. Speaking of protests, we got some, for all those out there that are participating in protests, we got some protesters' rights that we're going to bring you here in just a sec so everybody can stay informed and stay safe. We'll be getting you Leon Purvis, Fox 9's own Leon Purvis, live from Lake Street. He was also on the scene last night in the aftermath of the shooting, so we'll be talking to Leon about what he saw, what he's seeing right now. Like I said, anything that we know, we're going to give it to you right in real time. The afternoon shift is continuing to focus on the tragic and the travesty that was the shooting of Renee Good yesterday. More afternoon shift in just a sec. afternoon shift. Max Fuller here. Grace Henry doing fantastic work behind the scenes, as is per usual. We all continue to try and sort through the travesty that was the shooting of Renee Good yesterday by an ICE agent. We're all continuing to try to process this, sort through this. I cannot even imagine what this day is like for the family of Renee Good. My heart, our hearts, the hearts of Minnesota all together goes out to them. And I know a lot of y'all, one way or another, feel very strongly about this. And, I kind of laugh because feeling strongly is the understatement of the century. You feel it in your heart. You feel it in your gut. You feel it in your soul. You're scared. You're angry, you're confused, and you want to let your voice be heard. You got every right to do that. Listen, that's what the good old US of A, that's what we were founded on, baby. So whatever you believe in, there's surely a lot of spaces for you to let your voice be heard right now. There's peaceful protests going on all around the state. We just brought you one outside of the Whipple building in Minneapolis. So here on the afternoon shift, we wanted to give you some guidelines so you can let your voice be heard while also keeping yourself and others out of harm's way. Here are some guidelines straight from the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. Grace did a great job making this graphic up here. I'm just going to read some of them from what I got. This is straight from aclu.org. Your rights are strongest in what are known as traditional public forums. These are streets, sidewalks, and parks. You also likely have the right to speak out on other public property like plazas in front of government buildings, as long as you're not blocking access to the government buildings or interfering with other purposes the property was designed for. I know a lot of, obviously, the shooting took place in a residential area. Private property owners can set their own rules for speech on their property. So if there are protests going on in residential areas, the government may not restrict your speech if it is taking place on your own property or with the consent of the property owner. So just make sure if it's not your property that you have the consent of the property owner, and then you should be all good to go. When you are lawfully present in any public space, you have the right to photograph anything in plain view, including federal buildings and the police. On private property, again, the owner may set the rules related to photography or video. I think this one is especially key because obviously video of the incident, various videos of the shooting have played a key role in the public's opinion of forming of this and just kind of what our understanding of how the incident went down. You don't need a permit to march in the streets or on sidewalks as long as marchers don't obstruct car or pedestrian traffic. If you don't have a permit, police officers can ask you to move to the side of a street or sidewalk to let others pass for safety reasons. Now, if you believe that your rights have been violated in any type of way, you should write down everything you remember, including possibly officer's badge and patrol car numbers and the agency that they work for. Get contact information for other witnesses possibly on the scene. Again, take photographs, videos of any injuries, or as much photograph and video evidence of the ongoing situation as you can. And once you have all this information, you can file a written complaint with the agency's Internal Affairs Division or a civilian complaint board. Again, this is all from the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. They got plenty. If you type in protesters' rights, aclu.org, they have a really informative website where they got all types of FAQs, frequently asked questions for those that may not know, and they just have perfectly laid out, very straightforward guidelines on aclu.org. Grace.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important to keep yourself and others safe in these conditions. We're not able to take it right now, but the protests that we were just looking at the Whipple Federal Building escalated quite a bit. Mm-hmm. It looked like a couple people were taken by some ICE agents. We're working on seeing if we can bring images to you, but it's just a reminder. It's so important to try to remain peaceful and as a constitutional observer, you have that right to photograph, to record things in public spaces. But yes, so thank you, Max, for bringing us those guidelines. I'm going to bring up the graphic one more time just so that people can take a look at it.
For sure. Absolutely. Once again, these are some protesters' rights. Not an exhaustive list by any means. You can go on aclu.org. Obviously, this is increasingly important. There's going to be more and more protests. There already is tons of protests around the state of Minnesota, around the country right now. And obviously, there's going to continue to be more protests. As Grace said, we seem to have a developing situation at the Whipple building, which is just incredibly heartbreaking to hear about. Again, so here's some more ACLU protesters' rights. These are what to do if you believe your rights have been violated. All very important information. Again, I'm going to re-emphasize aclu.org. If you're on Google, aclu.org, protesters' rights, a fantastic webpage with all types of information. More on the tragic shooting of Renee Good coming up next on the afternoon shift. Welcome back to the afternoon shift. We're trying to keep you up to date with all of the latest news surrounding the shooting of Renee Good by an ICE officer in Minneapolis yesterday. We're joined by Fox 9's own Leon Purvis, who was on the scene yesterday in the aftermath of the shooting. Leon, first of all, thanks for being here with us. You got a million things going on, brother. You still made some time, so we appreciate you for that. Where are you headed right now?
So right now we actually just parked near the intersection of Lake Street in Chicago, where there is another protest that is happening tonight.
You were on the scene yesterday evening in the aftermath of the shooting. Leon, can you kind of just walk through what you saw, what was going on?
Yeah, I got there around 12:30 in the afternoon yesterday. And when I had gotten there, the protesters were basically asking Minneapolis police, because Minneapolis police was there kind of for crowd control, right? So this is after ICE agents have left. So Minneapolis police and the sheriff's office was there kind of for crowd control, and protesters were chanting things like, to go arrest ICE and different things in regards to reaction to what happened yesterday morning. And then eventually police had left, and when police were leaving, a lot of the protesters were throwing snowballs at the police officers. And again, this is local law enforcement. This was not ICE. And then once police left, a lot of the community, they blocked off the roadway so they can have a vigil in honor of Renee Good last night. So tensions are high right now, and a lot of people have strong feelings in regards to what happened yesterday.
Absolutely. We just mentioned it a second ago. It seems to be a situation that may have escalated a little bit at the Whipple building over in Minneapolis. Leon, I imagine you talked to quite a few folks out there when you were on the scene yesterday. What was kind of just some of the responses from the general public following this shooting?
Well, just talking to eyewitnesses and just getting the different accounts. We talked to one gentleman who recorded the video and just was walking us through kind of step by step on what he saw, and also just speaking to people on the ground there. They're very upset and they're very angry in regards to what happened, but also at the same time, us as journalists, we had to be able to meet the moment and really cover both sides of the story.
Yeah, what was as a journalist? Obviously, this is murky waters. Situations like these. I mean, listen, nobody needs to feel bad for us or anything like that. But it is a reality of the fact of the job right now. What was your experience like as a journalist covering the situation yesterday?
I think my experience in regards to covering this is getting the community impact and how the community's responding. I mean, I was on the ground there for 10 hours yesterday, and the kind of the mood of people that were there, they were very angry, very upset, and it's just being able to navigate those conversations and those interviews on what made them show up, why are they here, and how do they feel like this will change things, because they want their voices to be heard loud and clear. Again, there's a lot of unknowns as the investigation continues, right, Adam, or rather Max, right, Max? But again, one thing that was certain is how the community felt. They were very loud and clear about that.
Now, Leon, a lot has happened since yesterday. Obviously, this information is kind of flying at us left and right. It can be hard for the general public to kind of discern what's happening. I know you don't have an exhaustive list of everything that's happened in the last 24 hours, but just give us a little update of some of the things that have been happening today.
Yeah. So some of the things that happened today is it came out that the FBI is going to lead the investigation. At first, the BCA was going to do a joint investigation with the FBI, but now the FBI is going to lead the investigation into the ICE involved shooting. And also, Fox 9 has confirmed the identity of the ICE agent.
So a lot happening, a lot more to find out. We're still trying to piece together bits of information. Still, lots of mysteries when it comes to trying to solve this puzzle and get to the bottom of this travesty. Leon, what can we expect from you tonight on the Fox 9 News?
Well, we're just going to be out here. We're just going to be out here kind of covering what's happening in real time, right? We're going to be, out here getting what the sense of tonight is going to be like. Also get the sense of what's making people show up and why are they here, and also just get a sense of what the mood is today, one day later, just getting a sense of the community reaction, because like you had mentioned, Max, how things were kind of intense earlier outside of the federal building. So as you can imagine, this is probably going to be something that's going to be continuous for days to come.
Absolutely. We're going to be dealing with this and the aftermath and the ripple effects of this for a long time to come. Leon, you're one of the best in the business. That's why we got you out there in situations like this. Excellent job covering this tragedy. I wish your Eagles the worst, but I wish you the best, my brother. I appreciate you. I had to throw that shot in. I got to keep it a little bit lighthearted if I can, but I wish you the best, brother. Thank you for everything that you're doing today.
Of course. Anytime, Max.
That is Fox 9's own Leon Purvis. He'll be on the scene all evening. He's out there at Lake Street covering protests. I'm sure the Fox 9. Listen, this is the place to be if you want to stay up to date with information on everything that's happening. We got you covered here, so we'll be doing extensive coverage on this situation and the aftermath of it all throughout the evening as well. We're going to wrap up the afternoon shift in just a second. Stick with us. Welcome back to the afternoon shift. Max Fuller here. This is a Grace Henry production, bringing you the latest information on the tragic shooting of Renee Good by an ICE officer yesterday during an immigration enforcement operation. We heard from Governor Tim Walz and Minnesota Department of Safety Commissioner Bob Jacobson just a second ago. But if you want to hear their words in full, Fox 9 YouTube, fox9.com's got you covered. We're going to throw it to a press conference by MIRAC, Minnesota Immigration Rights Action Committee, from earlier today. But before we sign off it and throw to this protest, I do want to I want to borrow a quote from Jerry Springer. You're probably not going to see a lot of news shows quoting Jerry Springer today, but this is the afternoon shift after all. Jerry Springer closed out almost every episode of his show saying, "Take care of yourself and each other." I can't think of anything better to say myself. So take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Listen, I know a lot of y'all are out there are angry. You're scared. You're confused. We're all trying to make sense of it, but just make it to tomorrow so you can keep hearing, letting your voice be heard. Thanks for rocking with us here on the afternoon shift. Keep it locked on Fox 9 all evening. We got the latest information. As soon as we get it, you get it. This is the place to be to stay up to date and informed. Shout out to all of my colleagues that are doing fantastic work. And again, shout out to Grace Henry for killing it on the production as always. Love y'all. Be easy. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Again, we're going to throw it to various members of MIRAC who spoke earlier about the shooting today.
Good afternoon. My name is Montana Hirsch, MONTANAHIRSCH, and I am a member of the Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee and the People's Action Coalition Against Trump. We are here today to condemn the escalation of ICE agents in our city and say justice for Renee Good. This week, we have seen the effects of 2,000 more agents being deployed to Minneapolis. There are actions happening in the Twin Cities every day to demand ICE out of Minnesota, and we encourage everyone to attend. We are inviting everyone to take the streets with MIRAC this Saturday at 1 p.m. starting at Powderhorn Park for a rally and march. This week, we have seen ICE murder Renee Good, a mother who was out trying to keep her community safe and has done nothing wrong. Shame! Shame! We have seen community members stepping up to keep us safe, including so many educators. We have seen ICE agents increase presence around our school, like yesterday's attack right across the street here at Roosevelt High School, where they brutalized and detained an educator and tear gassed students at dismissal time. Shame! Shame! I am an educator in Minneapolis Public Schools, and I'm only able to be present here today because Minneapolis Public Schools are closed for the day and for the rest of the week because students, families, and staff do not feel safe going to school. Shame! Shame! We stand in full solidarity with the immigrant community in Minneapolis and with all who are patrolling the streets to keep our neighborhoods safe and fighting back against ICE terror. We demand justice for Renee Good. This includes the immediate arrest of the killer ICE agent, the immediate release of his identity to the public. We demand a real sanctuary policy in all of Minnesota that prohibits any local law enforcement or city or state officials from working with ICE at every level of Minnesota government, including the city, county, and state. Yes. Yes. And we demand ICE out of Minnesota and legalization for all. Yeah. Yes. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Alvin Shang with the Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee. Woo-hoo.
My name is Alvin Sheng, and that's ALVINSHENG, and I'm a member of the Minnesota Immigrant Rights Action Committee, MIRAC. The previous Sunday, the Trump administration deployed 2,000 ICE agents to Minneapolis as part of a targeted attack on our Somali and Latine communities. Christie, no propaganda against our community. However, we will not be cowed into giving up our civil rights in the face of this aggression. This was a follow-up to the so-called Operation Metro Surge, which started in December of last year, where ICE agents started prowling our neighborhoods and kidnapping our immigrant neighbors with a much higher intensity than before. This was the moment that spontaneous rapid response networks and those organized by MIRAC Immigrant Defense Network, and Monarca kicked into high gear. The people participating in these networks have been heroic. We should keep up the effort, but also remember to remain as united as possible by following the St. Paul principles and put the impacted immigrants' needs first. I want to take a moment to recognize that it is a scary time. Our neighbors are being kidnapped off the streets as we speak. However, the response to this should not be isolating ourselves, but leaning even more on our community. Yesterday, a 37-year-old constitutional observer, Renee Nicole Gerd, was shot and killed by ICE agents while driving away when they were conducting a raid in South Minneapolis. In the wake of Renee's murder, 10,000 people showed up on Portland Avenue to express their grief and commitment to stand up for their immigrant neighbors. This is in addition to the vigils and protests that have erupted across the country, many of which were organized by the chapters of the Legalization for All network. Rest in peace, Renee Nicole Good. Thank you for standing up for our immigrant neighbors. We absolutely have the numbers. The more we show up for each other, the safer all of us will be. So get trained, get organized, and show up for each other. Who keeps us safe?
We keep us safe.
That's right. It's not the police nor Walz's National Guard, but ultimately us, the community, that keeps us safe. This is illustrated by the recent passage of a stronger sanctuary city ordinance in Minneapolis, which was only possible through the grassroots efforts of MIRAC and immigrant rights allies. To maintain our momentum, please join us at the rally and march this Saturday at 1 p.m. at the northwest corner of Powderhorn Park, where we'll celebrate our victory and hold our Minneapolis leaders accountable to the stronger separation ordinance. When immigrant rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
Damn right. Thank you all.
back here to the afternoon shift. It is right past 4 o'clock, and we're continuing our coverage of the ICE officer-involved shooting that took place yesterday in Minneapolis, in South Minneapolis. Renee Good, 37 years old, shot and killed yesterday. We are now joined by an attorney, writer, a very proud Minneapolis resident, and somebody that attended last night's vigil for Miss Good, Chris Damian. Chris, welcome to the afternoon shift. Thank you for being here. I know it's not the most joyous time to be here, but thank you for coming by to the studio. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, so can you walk us back yesterday? And you've been living in Minneapolis for several years now. Yeah. What was the first time that you heard of this story yesterday, and what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, so, I would say it's been an odd time for me in the Twin Cities recently. I think for a lot of people living here, certainly in a special way for people who feel like they could be subject to kind of ICE enforcement actions. I have regular conversations with my friends, especially people who appear Latino or Black or Asian on, do we carry around our passport cards? So I would say, for me, it was an odd day because I already felt a lot of anxiety being in the community right now. I recall thinking, do I want to leave my house? Do I not? To go kind of work at a coffee shop for a little bit, which has been a new experience for me with ICE's kind of increased presence in recent days. So
you've seen ICE on your own city blocks where you live?
Not on my city blocks where I live, but I have friends that have been sending pictures. I've seen videos of them in my old neighborhood, videos of them in neighborhoods where I go very regularly, and there have been enforcement actions. And like Ola Arepa, which is a restaurant that I love in South Minneapolis. We followed that story. So, I got myself to leave the house because I just thought that's something that I should do. I don't want to just be afraid and have their presence here dictate how I live my life. So I was sitting in a coffee shop yesterday, and finding out that this was happening. And I will say that my initial reaction was, obviously horror at what happened, and shock, but unfortunately not surprise. I think that a lot of people were saying that just with the way in which a lot of these operations have been going, the kind of massive recruitment of ICE agents with limited time to train them, we've been worried that something like this could happen. So it was a very, very heavy day yesterday. I will say one of the things that I love about the Twin Cities community is how quickly people can kind of jump into action and respond. I think we have an incredible protest culture here, actually, with I think really incredible organizers who do a great job of organizing massive protests that are peaceful and, where people show up with their family members. So you'll see little kids, you'll see old ladies with their husbands. And so, pretty soon after Renee Good was shot, very quickly, the vigil last night was organized. And I saw it on social media and was able to attend.
Yeah, so lots to unpack there. Let's start with the vigil. I know you were at the vigil last night. Can you give us the scene? Can you describe to us who was there, what was said? So many of us saw so many pictures and videos of it online, but you were there. What was it like being there?
Yeah, well, so it's as I shared, it's been a really heavy time, and even I felt anxiety about going. Yesterday was a very overwhelming day, and showing up and arriving, I think I was immediately struck by how many people were there. It's my understanding that there were thousands of people in attendance, and you show up and you can't see where the people end. And I saw people holding signs. There was someone giving out flowers to people. There was a Somali woman out there giving out tea. And so, I immediately felt like, oh, this is why I love being here. It's, neighbors showing up all in grief, sadness, anger, obviously. So, I just showed up. And the first thing was just being with everyone and, lots of people holding their signs. And then kind of a main group that were kind of giving speeches and chanting. And, there's sadness expressed. There's lots of anger expressed, which makes a lot of sense. But I think for me, it was very consoling to kind of get off of social media and be there present with other members of my community.
Yeah. You bring up social media. I know a lot of these vigils and protests, they get organized via social media. How did you initially hear about the vigil that was taking place last night?
Yeah, it was through social media, actually. Yeah, so I want to say it was maybe through the Defend 612 account, which also does a lot of kind of community organizing around kind of like neighborhood watches and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I know you've been in Minneapolis for several years. You're not a Twin Cities native per se, but you have been embraced by this community. You were here in 2020 during George Floyd, and a lot of people out there are kind of drawing some similarities between what happened yesterday and George Floyd's passing, his death as well. Can you describe sort of the similarities that maybe you're experiencing between those two very significant events here in Minneapolis that just took place several blocks away from each other too?
Yeah, so it is odd how similar and then also how different those experiences are. Obviously, the murder of George Floyd was this major cultural global flashpoint, and it brought up a lot of tensions, anxiety, fear. It was a wake-up call for a lot of people. I think that for me, it was a wake-up call to a lot of the history of racism in the Twin Cities that I was unaware of, our history of redlining, the ways in which the racist history of this community shaped even just the way that the place that I had lived. I took time to reflect, and I realized that I lived in a primarily black and brown neighborhood, and all of my white friends all lived in predominantly white neighborhoods, which was interesting because we were all in the same socioeconomic class. And so it brought up a lot of anxiety, but then obviously living through that experience with the rioting and the deployment of the National Guard was very scary. At that time, no one knew it was going to happen. Lots of the city was on fire. And interestingly, one of the things as I was reflecting on this that really strikes me is the different responses from the various kind of law enforcement agencies. So, we had tons of destruction and looting in the Twin Cities, but one of the things that really strikes me about that time is even with how intense it was, there were no deaths as the result of law enforcement during that time period. And also when I think about especially the response of our mayors and of our governor, I really felt that they were trying to grapple with the grief of the community, both condemning unnecessary and unjust violence, both by residents of this community and also by law enforcement, also trying to get some semblance of order so we could think about where do we want to go next, and acknowledging the pain and the sadness and the fear that a lot of people were experiencing. You contrast that with this moment right now, and it's interesting that the Twin Cities have been painted recently as this like lawless, dangerous place, but actually the first homicide of 2026 occurred at the hands of an ICE agent, which I don't mean to interrupt really here. Striking.
I'm just jumping in because we're getting some live chopper shots, and I thought just speaking of vigils for Renee, we've actually got a vigil we can take a shot of right now. The chopper is in the air over the site of where Renee lost her life. I'm just going to see if I can bring that up for you now.
And that's where you were just last night,
Yeah.
Was that vigil? Was that memorial that was there that you see there now, Chris? Was that active yesterday, or has it's been growing since?
So I mean, my understanding is there are fewer people out there, but I think kind of like still signs and people congregating. I think in moments like these, it's really important to kind of honor the significance of a place and where things have happened, and also just where someone died. And this matters to all of us. I think in this community, we've been fearing something like this, and someone who lived in the neighborhood, who was a mom in her SUV. And it's I just think it's so sad that she leaves behind a 6-year-old where without an investigation, you have the Secretary of Homeland Security calling that kid's mom a trained terrorist. So I think that there's a lot of like grief that will continue to live in that place for a long time, but I appreciate how the Twin Cities, we continue to go back and remember and think of these places as important.
Chris Damian, a local attorney, a very proud Minneapolis resident. Thank you so much for coming here to the afternoon shift and providing your perspectives on your attendance at the vigil last night. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks. We are going to go to commercial, I believe, and when we come back, Leon Purvis is going to be at the site of where this tragedy took place yesterday. So stay with us right here on the afternoon shift. Fox 9 reporter Leon Purvis coming up next. Welcome back here to the afternoon shift. It is almost 4:15. We are going to bring you back out into the city of Minneapolis. We're going to Lake in Chicago, where Fox 9 reporter Leon Purvis is, ahead of a planned protest that's about to begin in about 75 minutes from now, right about at 5:30. Leon Purvis, thank you so much for being with us. Welcome back to the afternoon shift.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam.
Thanks, Leon. Hey, what can you tell us about this protest that's expected to start around 5:30?
Well, for the protest is expected to start around 5:30. It's by one of the organized groups here in the Twin Cities. And, just pulling it up on my phone right now. Basically, it's ran by one of the organizations, actually, that was at yesterday's protest. It's 5501 Minnesota. It's organized by that and other organizations as well. So it begins at 5:30 tonight. And this is, of course, into response with what happened yesterday morning in the sending of, federal agents here.
Yeah. Now, there was a lot of video coming from the Whipple Federal Building yesterday. It looked like there were some protests that were happening around there. Do you think that this is going to get to the point where it could get a little contentious between the protesters and law enforcement potentially?
I know this morning was kind of intense. Also, there was some intensity yesterday morning as well when it first initially happened. We just got to see how it plays out. I think that's one of the biggest things is our role here is to report what's happening in real time and cover what's happening in real time. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do right now. Of course, a lot of people are upset. A lot of people are angry. And so we're just going to be here every step of the way.
Leon, is there any significance to the area of Lake in Chicago where this is going down? Of course, the shooting yesterday happened at 34th in Portland. Is Lake in Chicago, is that an area of significance that you know of?
Not like, necessarily to like, everything going on, but it's not far also from because we're at like in Chicago. What happened yesterday was at 34th in Portland. So it's all in that, I would say, not far of a driving distance vicinity. And so there's no super significance, but this is where the people wanted to have it tonight.
Leon, I know you've been a reporter here at Fox 9 for over a year now. You've covered a bunch of different stories, many involving, some involving protests as well. I know you've covered these throughout your career. What should somebody expect if they're attending a protest for the first time? This is something that I do not have any experience in. I'm curious from your reporting that you've done on previous protests, what are some things to expect?
I mean, you're going to hear, I would say, many things on basically how people feel. Typically people demonstrate for change that they want to happen. I mean, I have been covering protests for a number of years, like all around the country. And there's always, people gathering and asking for very similar things. And I can say, based on covering the protest yesterday, what I can say is that there were many protesters that were asking Minneapolis police to arrest ICE because they were unhappy in regards to what happened. And this was all yesterday. I got on scene at 34 in Portland around 12:30 yesterday. And protesters, Minneapolis police and the sheriff's office was there for kind of crowd control. This is after ICE left, but many people were chanting to arrest ICE and things like that. So a lot of people are upset in regards to what happened. And so the main thing is there's going to be a lot of messaging in regards to what kind of change they want and their feelings about what happened yesterday.
Yeah, and you were talking about the protest that you were that you covered yourself yesterday. Did you ever find that anything got super contentious to the point of violence on either side at all?
No, nothing got super contentious. I would say. I think as the night went on, more people had showed up. The crowd had grew significantly. I would say for the most part, in regards to last night, it was peaceful, but also there was a point where Minneapolis police had left, and when police were leaving that area, there were some protesters throwing snowballs at police, and then the community blocked off the road for the vigil last night. And so, there was a vigil last night, the crowd grew, and then more people came last night too. So it was mostly peaceful for the most part because it was a very community-driven thing.
Yeah, and you talk about it being peaceful. Is this protest that's expected to happen today around 5:30? Is this something that the Minneapolis Police Department is aware of, to your knowledge? Is this something that they are plan on, coming to make sure that things stay peaceful and things don't get out of hand?
I mean, there's been reports, just coming from the governor's office, for example, the National Guard to be on standby. And so as these protests and demonstrations are happening, they're definitely community-led, and they're definitely going to let the community demonstrate and do their things. But there's also a lot of organizations on standby if something were to happen.
Hey, Leon, Paul here. I just have a quick question for you. As someone that has been there on the ground, we see these images coming back from these protests. They seem relatively peaceful. Like even earlier, less than an hour ago, we were getting pictures, live feeds back from out on the ground near the Henry Whipple building. Things seemed really calm, and then all of a sudden a protester threw a water bottle at ICE agents, and then it just erupts. My question to you is, is there a tense undertone, even though it seems peaceful? What is it like, the energy of being in that situation?
That's a great question. There's definitely a tense undertone, I think, when these situations happen, because you always have, either protesters yelling at law enforcement or yelling at ICE. So it's always very, very tense. But that's the thing about the First Amendment right, is you can demonstrate and you can yell and scream. But once, if, for example, a protester throws a water bottle or someone touches someone touches someone else, that's how things escalate. And so, for example, when Minneapolis police was there for crowd control yesterday, there was many people chanting many things at police. And just, reference to this morning, it was mostly peaceful until someone threw a water bottle, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, and that obviously that can really spark things and bring things into a different direction.
I'm also curious though that in that tension, in that tense, are there moments of humanity? Do the protesters and the police, is there ever a civil nicety between the two of them, or is it very standoffish?
I would say it was more, from what I saw from law enforcement, more stoic, making sure everyone is okay, because their job is really to keep the community safe and allow them to demonstrate. So it's more like them not reacting to what the protesters are saying or what the protesters are doing unless something gets out of hand. I think that's kind of was the sentiment that I saw from law enforcement yesterday, because Police Chief Brian O'Hara has said repeatedly that they're not going to be involved in ICE raids, but they will be there to preserve and protect the community.
Yeah. Leon Purvis there at Lake in Chicago. Leon, you said that this protest is expected to go down at 5:30. I know that there will be continuing coverage on Fox 9 of not only this protest, but of just this whole situation involving Renee Good. Can you tell us, do you have any live hits planned for the evening broadcast today?
Yeah, there's multiple live hits throughout the night, as expected. And the main goal of tonight is just to cover what's happening in real time and what the community response is. And just really to be the eyes and ears of the community and just show people what's happening on the ground here. I mean, that's the whole purpose of being here. That's the whole purpose of why we're covering what we're covering, by still covering the facts and what's going on in regards to what's just unfolding today. A lot had unfolded today. So.
Yeah. I guess one more question right before we let you go. Just what are sort of your expectations? We're about an hour away from this. You said, yesterday seemed, mostly peaceful. Do you feel, and I know Paul brought up that tension question. Do you feel like things have cooled down now that we're more than 24 hours removed from the situation? Or do you think the temperature has actually escalated a bit, even with the day removed from this?
Well, it's hard to say, speak for people who I haven't seen yet today, right? But things have came out based on what the vice president had said earlier today in the press conference. Also of note, the FBI is going to lead the investigation. So that means the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and the BCA don't have any access to the investigation itself. Now, also keep in mind, when the FBI leads the investigation, that's not uncommon for any city or any jurisdiction. So there's also that to keep in mind as well. But, people are going to come with their own interpretations.
Yeah. And you mentioned Vice President J.D. Vance and the press conference that he held here earlier this afternoon. We're going to be playing a portion of that press conference after we say goodbye to you, Leon, and we go to commercial break. But in the meantime, Leon, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're very busy, got a lot to cover. We'll look forward to seeing you on the Fox 9 news throughout the evening, and we'll be checking back in with you potentially even tomorrow with an update and maybe another even protest that's going down tomorrow.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Leon. Appreciate it. Thank you. With that, like I just said, Leon mentioned it himself. Vice President J.D. Vance, he did make some remarks in regards to the death of Renee Good, and we're going to be playing a portion of that press conference later today. Leon also mentioned this, that the FBI is handling this case, that the Hennepin County Attorney's Office is out of the mix here. That has developed also today, and like Leon said, that could be adding to tensions that could be coming at 5:30. We're going to go to commercial break, and we're going to come back with the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, and what he had to say on the situation earlier tonight. back to the afternoon shift. We're continuing our coverage of the shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good by an ICE officer. As promised before the commercial break, we're going to bring you a portion of a press conference that took place earlier today by Vice President J.D. Vance, where he spoke specifically about Minnesota and its leadership. And this is why we decided to play this specific portion of the press conference where he's talking specifically about the state of Minnesota. Paul, let's roll in this clip.
I'll take some questions, but I want to make just one final observation here. When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline. I'm just going to read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills U.S. citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day. What that headline leaves out is the fact that that very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation in the United States of America. What that headline leaves out is that that woman is part of a broader left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and to make it impossible for our ICE officers to do their job. If the media wants to tell the truth, they ought to tell the truth that a group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws. The President stands with ICE. I stand with ICE. We stand with all of our law enforcement officers. And part of that is recognizing that you people in the media, not everybody in this room, but many people in this room have been lying about this attack. She was trying to ram this guy with her car. He shot back. He defended himself. He's already been seriously wounded in law enforcement operations before, and everybody who's been repeating the lie that this is some innocent woman who was out for a drive in Minneapolis when a law enforcement officer shot at her, you should be ashamed of yourselves. Every single one of you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I wanted to read a quote from Tim Walz earlier today. He said, "When things looked bleak, it was Minnesota's first that held the line for the nation on July 3rd, 1863, and I think we may be in that moment now." Can you comment on his rhetoric and Mayor Jacob Frey and whether they want to see unrest in Minneapolis?
Well, that's very tough rhetoric from a guy who just quit because his fraudulent activities have been uncovered. Look, Tim Walz is a joke. His entire administration has been a joke. The idea that he's some sort of freedom fighter, he's not. He's a guy who has enabled fraud and maybe, in fact, has participated in fraud. That's what this new Assistant Attorney General position is going to find out. I don't care what Tim Walz says. I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people, and I care about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. That's what we're going to stay focused on.
A related question here. I mean, Democrats have accused ICE of murder. They've said they're targeting Americans. They've told ICE to get the F out of Minnesota. This is going to stoke the fire against ICE agents, and you're talking about ICE agents right now and being concerned about them. What, if anything, is the administration going to do to make sure these folks are protected during these protests? But also, should DHS sort of revisit their procedures here? I mean, nobody wants to see an American killed. Are there changes that need to be made to make sure something like this doesn't happen again?
Look, first of all, of course, nobody wants an American citizen to be killed. This is absolutely a tragedy, but it's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights. What our ICE officers are doing is deporting the millions of criminal aliens that were let in during the Biden administration. So number one, we have to say, as a matter of leadership, and I would appreciate if the Democrats would join me on this, let's be honest about the fact that we have way too many illegal aliens in this country. Our ICE officers should be supported in doing their job. You're trying to actually marshal the far left lunatic fringe to engage in doxing, to try to make it impossible for them to enforce the law, and in some cases actually to engage in acts of domestic terrorism against our law enforcement officers. When you talk about different plans, different protocols, different policies, I forget exactly how you asked the question. Here's the simple fact. What we're going to do is make it easier for the American People's Administration to enforce the American people's law. And that means that Democrats have to stop rallying the mob against legitimate law enforcement operations. And that means that we are going to get tougher, and that's what this AAG position is about. We're going to get tougher at the people who are defrauding the United States by inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's one of the things that we're going to do. We've already started that work at the Department of Justice, but we're going to keep on doing it, and this new AAG position is going to kick that into high gear.
Vice President Vance, you just suggested that this woman who was killed, Renee Good, is part of a broader left-wing network. Who do you think is behind this broader left-wing network?
Well, it's one of the things we're going to have to figure out, but here's the way that I put it. When somebody throws a brick at an ICE agent, or somebody tries to run over an ICE agent, who paid for the brick? And who told protesters to show up and engage in violent activity against our law enforcement officers? You see, just with this most recent terrible incident in Minneapolis, you see friends of this woman's or other people who are eyewitnesses saying basically that she was there to engage in obstruction of a legitimate law enforcement operation. How did she get there? How did she learn about this? There's an entire network, and frankly, some of the media are participating in it, that is trying to incite violence against our law enforcement officers. It's ridiculous, it's preposterous, and part of our investigatory work is getting to the bottom of it. Who's funding it? Who's supporting it? Who's cheerleading it? And of course, if there's a legal activity related to that, we're going to get to the bottom of that and prosecute it where we can.
Mr. Vice President, thank you for taking questions today. Is there a risk with you describing her as a deranged leftist, talking about very specific facts of these events, when an investigation is just beginning? Are you preempting a thorough investigation by drawing such conclusions? And have you received any information beyond the videos we've seen publicly about this individual, her specific acts, that has informed your point of view?
Well, first of all, the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. The Department of Homeland Security is already investigating this. But the simple fact is, what you see is what you get in this case. You have a woman who is trying to obstruct a legitimate law enforcement operation. Nobody debates that. You have a woman who aimed her car at a law enforcement officer and pressed on the accelerator. Nobody debates that. I can believe that her death is a tragedy, while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making and a tragedy of the far left, who has marshaled an entire movement, a lunatic fringe, against our law enforcement officers. I think what is clearly happening here, and it's going to keep on happening unless the Democrats wake up and say, you know what, you don't have to agree with our immigration policies. You don't have to agree with what the president or the vice president believe about immigration enforcement, but why don't you take this to the ballot box? Why don't you vote? Why don't you organize? Instead, what some of them are doing is encouraging people to get violent with our law enforcement officials. It's disgraceful, and it's got to stop.
Just to follow up on that question, and again, thank you for taking questions, Mr. Vice President. There's clearly a lot of emotion in Minnesota, across the country, over this incident. You're calling Renee Good a deranged leftist. There's been heated rhetoric that we've also heard from officials. What responsibility do you and the president have to diffuse some of the tension that we are seeing play out in Minnesota, bring down the temperature as this investigation is unfolding?
What we have a responsibility to do is to protect the people who are enforcing the law and protect the country writ large. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, you deserve to have the people's laws enforced in the United States of America. Now, again, I'm not happy that this woman lost her life. I'm not happy that this woman was there at a protest violating the law by interfering with a law enforcement action. I think that we can all recognize that the best way to turn down the temperature is to tell people to take their concerns about immigration policy to the ballot box. Stop assaulting and stop inciting violence against our law enforcement officers. That's the best way to take down the temperature. And we're not going to give in to terrorism on this. And that's exactly what's happening. People trying to antagonize, to commit acts of violence. They throw bricks at them. Sometimes they shoot at them. Sometimes they dox them. Sometimes they go to their place of residence and harass their families. This is classic terrorism. And we cannot say that when a far left fringe is inciting violence against our brave law enforcement officials, that we're no longer going to enforce the law. That's rewarding the very people who are engaged in this garbage. The actual reward that they just got is a new assistant attorney general who is going to prosecute and investigate this stuff even more aggressively than before. Yeah.
Thanks for taking my question. So the head of Minnesota's investigations agency says that the U.S. Attorney's Office has essentially cut off the state investigations agency's access to the investigation. What is the precedent for that, and why shouldn't the Minnesota officials on the ground have access and evidence to work on this investigation?
First of all, I wish the state officials in Minnesota would investigate why you have so many people who are using their vehicles and other means to actually interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation. The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job. The idea that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minneapolis are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable because he was doing the job that he was asked to do is preposterous. The unprecedented thing is the idea that a local official can actually prosecute a federal official with absolute immunity. I've never seen anything like that. It would get tossed out by a judge. So what I'd like Minnesota to focus on is the real issue, that they're encouraging people. Minneapolis officials are encouraging people to commit violence against ICE officials. It's ridiculous. It's got to stop. Go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you. You said earlier that there's a left-wing network to attack, to dox, to assault, and make it impossible for ICE officers to do their job. You told my colleague just now that there's an investigation going on into that network.
Yep.
So if everything that you say is true, how does being part of that network justify being shot?
Well, being part of the network doesn't justify being shot, but ramming an ICE officer with your car, that's what justifies being shot. It's not a good thing, by the way, but when you force somebody to engage in self-defense, it's almost a preposterous question. I'm not saying that funding some of this stuff justifies capital punishment. Nobody would suggest that. The reason this woman is dead is because she tried to ram somebody with her car and that guy acted in self-defense. That is why she lost her life, and that is the tragedy. Now, there may be other violations of the law and other penalties that are associated with those violations of the law. For example, if you are funding violence against our law enforcement officers, I'm not a prosecutor. My guess is that's not the sort of thing that earns capital punishment, but it should sure as hell earn you a few years in prison if you're funding the effort to try to assault our law enforcement officers. I'm sorry, guys, what's going on here? You guys are meant to report the truth. How have you let yourself become agents of propaganda of a radical fringe that's making it harder for us to enforce our laws? You just asked me a question that presumed that the reason why this woman died is because she was engaged in legitimate protest. She tried to run somebody over with her car, and the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
The investigation is still ongoing.
I said next question.
Mr. Vice President, I mean, you presumably watched the video yourself. There's not the slightest doubt in your mind, having viewed it, that the victim, you still believe that she deliberately tried to ram him despite seeing this video?
Look, I don't know what is in a person's heart or in a person's head, and obviously we're not going to get the chance to ask this woman what was going on. What I am certain of is that she violated the law. What I am certain of is that that officer had every reason to think that he was under very serious threat for injury or in fact, his life. What I'm certain of is that she accelerated in a way where she ran into the guy. I don't know what was in her heart and what was in her head, but I know that she violated the law, and I know that officer was acting in self-defense. It raises an interesting point, though. Look, if people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation. What's not reasonable is for so many of you to plaster all over the media that this was an innocent woman and that the ICE agent committed murder, which is what many of you have said explicitly and some of you have said implicitly. That's what I have an objection to. The idea that this was not justified is absurd, and I think everybody knows it in their heart. Yeah.
Mr. Vice President,
in the green jacket.
Taking down the temperature.
It seems like political violence is ratcheting up and riots could be around the corner. What steps does the administration have planned to try to unite America? Average people on both political sides are so tired of fighting with each other, and I think all the journalists in this room could agree with me that we don't want to be part of the problem. Do you have any words to unite America?
You know, I know you don't want to be a part of the problem, and I think that's true of a lot of you. I'm not sure it's true for everybody, because the reporting over this has been one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen in media. I've never seen a case so misrepresented and misreported when you have a guy who was defending himself and is now being treated as some sort of federal assassin by so many of the people in this room. First of all, let me say about crime. You mentioned violence. One of the things we're proudest about is that you saw violent crime over the last year drop by 20%. Why is that drop by 20%? Is it because we're attacking our law enforcement officers, or is it because we in the administration are empowering our law enforcement officers to enforce the law? I think that's one of the ways you take down the temperature, is you make people feel more secure and safe in their person and property. That's why we care so much about protecting our law enforcement, because it accrues to the benefit of the entire national community. I think that we can absolutely talk about the ways in which, you know, we can lower the temperature by discussing differences in a reasonable and rational way. Again, I'm happy to talk with any congressional Democrat or any of you about our immigration policy, about why I think it's necessary, about why I think it's in the best interest of the country, about why the President of the United States was elected to actually enforce the border for the first time in at least 4 years. So here's the problem. That's not the debate so many people are having. They are actively covering for people who are committing acts of violence against federal law enforcement. It is preposterous. The way to take down the temperature is to stop it. Have your debates about policy. Attack me. Attack the President of the United States. Don't attack our law enforcement officers. They are trying to do the job the American people demanded that they do. They are not policy actors. They are enforcing the law. They should be treated with a modicum of dignity and respect. And the fact that they're not is why incidents like yesterday happened. The one final point I'll make about this is, look, there's a part of me that feels very, very sad for this woman, not just because she lost her life, but because I think she is a victim of left-wing ideology. What young mother shows up and decides they're going to throw their car in front of ICE officers who are enforcing legitimate law? You've got to be a little brainwashed to get to that point to where you're willing not just to protest, that's fine, not peacefully protest, but throw your vehicle in front of legitimate law enforcement officers and drive your car into them. To get to that point, you have to be, I think, radicalized in a very, very sad way. I certainly wish that she hadn't got there. I know there's an ICE officer right now who very much wishes he was not put in the position where he had to fire a gun to defend his own life.
That was Vice President J.D. Vance speaking earlier today from the White House, taking questions specifically on Minnesota and the Minneapolis area, the shooting of Renee Good yesterday by a ICE officer. All right, we are going to stay in the city of Minneapolis and bring you a clip of another press conference that took place here this afternoon. And actually, Paul is telling me we're actually going to go to break first before we bring you that. What we are going to bring you after this commercial break is a press conference that took place among faith leaders here in the Twin Cities community, members of the Muslim, Jewish, Christian faiths, leaders from all of those parties, all coming together, united in speaking out against the actions that took place yesterday on 34th in Portland around 9:30 a.m., the shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good. All right, we're going to have that press conference coming up right after this break. Don't go anywhere. details at the top of the hour, where we will be bringing you the Fox 9 News at 5 o'clock, which will have continuing coverage of the ICE-involved shooting of Renee Good. Before we do that, we're going to roll in a press conference that took place earlier today among faith leaders in the Twin Cities communities, members of the Muslim, Jewish, Christian faiths, all coming together, all speaking out against the incident that took place yesterday on East 34th Street and Portland Avenue. Let's take a look at that clip now. No audio.
Yeah, it looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulty there. I'm not entirely sure what's happening there with that. Let me just see if I can get my head around that.
Yep.
2 seconds, Adam. I'm just going to duck in and, yeah, give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, yep. Like we've been covering all day today, Renee Good, 37 years old, shot yesterday by an ICE officer. The shooting comes as the Department of Homeland Security said ICE is undertaking its, quote, largest ever immigration enforcement operation. This, of course, comes amid this fraud story that's been taking place here for the last several weeks now. All of these things have been all kind of tied together and have kind of led to the moment that we experienced yesterday. We've heard from so many different people yesterday, and now I'm being told by Paul that we may have the clip. We do not have that clip. We are experiencing some technical difficulties when it comes to that. We're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to round out today's show and send you to the Fox 9 News at 5 o'clock. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are about to throw it to the Fox 9 News at 5 o'clock. Earlier in our show today, we brought on Fox 9 reporter Leon Purvis, who was at Lake in Chicago, which is going to be the site of a protest that's scheduled to start at 5:30. So in light of that, we thought that we'd bring up some protesters' rights as demonstrated by the ACLU. Paul, let's bring up the slide here of what everybody needs to know if they do plan on protesting this event. And there you see it right there. Strongest speech rights apply in traditional public forums like streets, sidewalks, and parks. You may also speak on other public property if you're not blocking access or disrupting intended use. Private property owners can set their own rules for speech and photography. The government cannot restrict speech on your own property or with the owner's permission. Counter-protesters have equal free speech rights. Police must treat all sides fairly. Police may separate opposing groups, but should keep them within sight and sound. In public spaces, you may photograph or record anything in plain view, including police and federal buildings. Those are the rights of protesters as demonstrated by the American Civil Liberties Union. And if you do plan on going to Lake in Chicago at 5:30 today, where Leon Purvis is, Fox 9 reporter Leon Purvis is, you should know those rights before going there. There's going to be so much more continuing coverage on the death of Renee Good, 37 years old, shot yesterday by an ICE officer near the area of 34th Street and Portland Avenue around 9:30 a.m. So much more to still come with this, so many more developments still to be had on this. And right here at Fox 9, we're going to be covering this story from wall to wall as we have been from the get-go and as we will be throughout the night tonight and throughout the day tomorrow. Paul, I know this has been a bit of a heavy day.
It has been a heavy day, a heavy couple of days, but
Yep.
The Fox 9 team, I can see them, everyone's sort of getting in position for the 5 o'clock news.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Kelsey Carlson and Simone Woolbridge at the desk tonight to be there for you at the 5 as we turn to 5 o'clock.
Mm.
I can see Rob Olsen is already out on the streets as well. We're getting some shots coming back in. I think I can see Corin as well. So I think you're going to hear from all of our reporters right close to the top of the hour, and as they bring you everything new as that all comes to hand.
Absolutely. So, like Paul said there, we will be having exclusive coverage of all of that, and we'll be continuing our coverage of this developing story tomorrow here at Fox 9 and here on the afternoon shift. So appreciative of all of our guests coming today. Chris Damian, who was at the Vigil for Renee Good yesterday. Of course, Fox 9 reporter Leon Purvis. And we heard from Vice President J.D. Vance as well, who all spoke about this incident. Again, Renee Good, 37 years old, shot yesterday by an ICE agent. The Department of Homeland Security has stressed that agent acted in self-defense. That agent is the same officer, you heard the vice president mention this, that was dragged 50 yards by a vehicle in Bloomington in June of 2025. This, of course, all went down yesterday morning around 9:30 in the area of East 34th Street and Portland Avenue. And this shooting comes as the Department of Homeland Security says ICE is undertaking its, quote, largest ever immigration enforcement operation. All right, it's been a heavy day here on the afternoon shift.